Hey guys, welcome to the Buck Brief. Very excited. First time on the program. Wade Stotts is here. He is a host of the Wade Show with Wade. He is a thought leader, which I am excited about, by the way. I appreciate that in your bio. And he's a thoughtful guy. There's so much we could talk about this week going on right now. I wanted to throw out to you, I think the Kamala campaign is in a quiet panic. They're not quiet quitting, but they're quiet panicking. What do you think?
Right. Yeah, I think it's this week has certainly been a crazy one for them. Just the display that we saw at the Trump rally with the richest man in the world jumping around like a toddler at Disneyland, and 100,000 people out there watching. It's been actually a pretty wild thing to watch these real people gathering at real places to be excited about Trump. Whereas we have Kamala showing up on this sort of like skanky podcast, and also the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, which is kind of its own skanky podcast at this point.
I think he doesn't even think what he does is funny anymore. I think
Yeah.
the Colbert Show is at a point like it's sad.
Yeah.
He's a little bit like the stripper who knows she shouldn't be doing it anymore, but like she needs the money.
Yeah. When Black Velvet comes on, he has to come out. Yeah. It's a bizarre thing to watch a guy. I mean, I think he's got some talented writers. I think he's got quite a bit of comedic talent, but yeah, I can't imagine that he, like him from 30 years ago, would be proud to watch his show every single night. But yeah,
He was. I will always admit, I thought he was kind of funny back in the day when he did. I mean, I actually thought it was funnier than the Daily Show for a while at Jon Stewart's peak when he was doing his sort of O'Reilly-esque character. But I actually thought that was pretty. And I was very right wing then. I'm very right wing now. I thought it was pretty funny, but unfortunately, it's just gotten kind of sad. But speaking of sad, I mean, the Kamala campaign at this point, well, actually, if we're going to talk sad, Tim Walz, I also think that they've reached a point where they realize this guy's kind of a nothing burger. Like he's actually so ineffectual and lame that it's hard for me to get too worked up about him even being in the second most important, or I guess actually vice president's not that important. You know what I mean? Like a heartbeat away from the presidency.
Yeah. Right.
But no, it's not working out for him either.
No, he'll show up on these shows now trying to, sort of look in control as compared to what he looked like in the debate, which was definitely, a different kind of display. But I thought in the vice presidential debate, I thought that JD did a good job of like using Tim Walz's nice guy thing against him, so that at a certain point, I think JD just kept saying, "Oh, I agree with you on this, and I think we agree on these points." And the sort of nice Midwestern guy had to say, "Oh yeah, we're actually friends. Everything's really good," and then forgot to attack him. And so it was a brilliant maneuver. I can't. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, did you have that moment that I think that I know because I talked to friends, a lot of people did. We're like, what this vice presidential debate's so weird. It's like they're kind of being cordial and. It's a little like watching like the way a high school debate would operate, where you're supposed to not be mean to your opponent.
Right. Yeah. Usually everybody after the debate is talking about who won. And I think a lot of times the things that people passed around after that one wasn't clips or wasn't big dunks, but it was just these looks that both of them gave the camera. It was bizarre to see the interaction be mainly about screenshots. And also that Tim Walz said he was friends with school shooters. So there was that clip, I think, was the only one I saw being passed around. But otherwise, it was just Tim Walz just looking panicky and JD looking at the camera.
Did you see SNL actually made fun of that one moment or that thing and really poking, I think, at the Kamala decision to go with Walz over Shapiro will, I think, if they lose, be one of the big Monday morning quarterbacking sessions of the whole campaign. And SNL, which is very left wing. Fun fact: the Weekend Update guy was my classmate and on the debate team with me in high school. So there's that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Haven't talked to him since we were in high school, but But yeah, the SNL is very left wing, but they even made fun of Walz just being like not getting it done, but also the school shooter comment was so weird. People misspeak, but usually you would correct something like that. I mean, he just must not have hurt himself at all.
Yeah, I think he did several days of debate coaching and nobody sort of flagged that line, which is bizarre. But yeah, SNL is such a fascinating thing because I think like most recently on Saturday, they had Nate Bargatze, who's a sort of, he doesn't talk about politics a lot. He's not, but he does appeal to.
I really like his stuff. Do you like his stuff? Yeah, I actually think he's really 100%. Funny, and I appreciate that I can watch him with my parents and not feel like I have to fast forward.
Yeah, absolutely. He's clean. He's also just kind of a like he's a Nashville guy, and is building his own kind of comedy network. But I think SNL kind of knows that it's lost a lot of normal folks, and then once in a while they'll bring on a guy like Nate Bargatze or like Shane Gillis, who just appeals to people who don't have bad relationships with their dads, or like you can tell that Shane Gillis and Nate Bargatze at least have Republican dads, or at least have that kind of thing, and don't hate them, which is great. It's a refreshing thing to see on TV, but at a certain level, you kind of lose people after something like you know, what was it, Hillary? Somebody dressed as Hillary Clinton singing singing some sad song after she lost. So I don't know if they can get people back, but at least they're trying.
I think they
It's
had
charming.
somebody actually sing a song. It was like a mournful ballad with a big photo of Hillary. Do you remember? Do you know? I think that was what. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So if I remember right, I think it was somebody singing like Hallelujah, singing like Jeff Buckley,
something
Hallelujah.
like Jeff Buckley. This is like when you break up with your girlfriend in high school and you have no context for like how you won't remember in 5 years or whatever. That's the kind of music that they put on. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What was supposed to be this punk rock late night TV show where everybody's a target. Yeah. Everybody had to have a mourning moment, like there was some kind of national tragedy.
Yeah. I have to say the big regret I have of the 2016 election is I lived at that time in Manhattan, but within half a mile of the would-be Hillary celebration headquarters. And I was so busy being like, I cannot believe Trump won, that I didn't think, oh my gosh, I should have gone over there and just been joyriding in the wreckage left by all the sad Chardonnay drinking that was going on.
You had to look at the pictures just like the rest of us. There was plenty of joy to be had.
Let's, we got a few things here on the immediate horizon. One is you're going to be seeing, I think, the early voting coming in, and also from what we can see right now in Pennsylvania, I think that's going to be one of the areas of real. I think when people look at this election, they'll see that it was Kamala's lack of connectivity with white working class voters in particular that is probably the end of it all. But I want to get back into the campaign and the latest with you in just a second. But first up, the inflation that we've been contending with under this Biden administration is not something you voted for, but you have to deal with it and the high prices that come along with it. But that's why I want you to deal with this financial stress. Donewithdebt.com. Unlike others, donewithdebt.com created new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt stands between you and bill collectors. They negotiate with your creditors to write off balances, cut interest, and stop penalties. They have a plan to put more money in your pocket month one, and Done with Debt is accepting clients right now. Go to their website, donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com, or you can call 888-322-1054. That's 888-322-1054 to chat with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Don't wait. Don't let this stress build up with the bills. Go to donewithdebt.com. Wade, what are the positive trends you're seeing in the election, and what are the things that worry you too, just in terms of winning where we have to win, not just the presidency, any Senate races you're concerned about? Like, give me your battlefield view of election 2024.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Pennsylvania, and I think that's certainly a keystone state. But the wild thing is that this moment that Trump couldn't have choreographed, this moment that happened back in July, where he was almost killed, happened in Pennsylvania, and happened in a place that was already a battleground, and then became even more so. But then, yeah, like you mentioned earlier, not picking Shapiro, then Kamala doesn't get all of the Pennsylvania draw that she might have gotten there before. What I think is fascinating is on the ground, I think we're seeing a lot of every sign points to Trump winning, at least if it were a fair fight, if there weren't thumbs on the scales all over the place. But I think that the media has lost enough credibility that now folks are not waiting around to see what they have to say. If people 4 years ago or 8 years ago had a certain picture of Donald Trump, I think that there are a lot of people who don't have that picture anymore, mainly because they've lost trust in institutions. And I think the storms that have happened recently and the horrible ways that people have been treated and left behind have certainly been part of that. And I understand why folks would be nervous about maybe calling it politicizing a storm or something like that. But that's essentially what has already happened, and of the way that the left has treated this. I think David Axelrod and Politico have put out all the thought pieces about how this storm could swing the election this way or that way. It's one of those just tragic things that they're definitely not working hard to get these rural southern states cleaned up by election day, but they'll probably get them cleaned up by tax day. At least I can assume so.
Yeah, I think that in the aftermath, it's been a few years now, but the lessons learned from the COVID pandemic, one of them for me is that this whenever a Democrat says don't politicize, fill in the blank, it's in bad faith. They'll politicize everything. They'll politicize a school shooting within minutes and say things that indicate we don't even know how many dead there are, what gun was used or anything. They'll politicize that right away. With COVID, they take a mass pandemic and all of a sudden they're telling everybody, Trump is horrible and we're all going to. I mean, I remember this. Do you remember Trump is going to be the reason that we all die from COVID? I mean, it's completely insane. And so now there's a storm, a hurricane and by the way, there's another one coming as you and I talk.
Right.
But there's a storm Helene that already hit. And their response to us is like, oh, yeah, we're doing a lot. Shut up. You're lying about it. I was like, well, why are all these people who live in these areas so upset about it? Like, you're calling them liars? The answer is yes, brother. Morning Joe, fresh off of the plane from Nantucket, wants the people of Western North Carolina to know they're lying. That's what Morning Joe is saying.
Right. Yeah. And the Kamala campaign always wants to keep things in airy-fairy world, like what we're going to do in the future. And here's our plan. Here are all the things that we're going to do. But they're both running on records. And so what's happening right now is that Kamala's record is still being written, and people don't like that. People don't like the way that it's happening. And everybody wants to talk about what Trump is going to do, what Trump is going to do in the future, just like they did back in 2020. But he was the president at the time, and he was the president for 4 years. We can point to his record, and we can point to Kamala's record. And rather than sitting around talking about what might happen or sort of theoretical, hypothetical situations, they're both having to deal with their own behavior. And Trump has a great record to go on. Kamala just doesn't. People aren't happy right now. And she can point to that and say, I'm going to fix it. But, she is in power right now.
I'm going to put a question out there that I want you to hold. We'll answer it when I come back from this sponsor in a second. But just want everyone to hear this. Who is actually the president right now? I think it's more complicated than a lot of people would respond. But we'll get to that in a second. Our nation's operating systems are having more than their fair share of failures, that's for sure. And some of the top researchers at Stansberry Research certainly think so. Now, they produce financial research. You might be saying, why do they care about infrastructure and all that? Well, they have an insightful new report that will explain it all about how strange so-called accidents are happening across America for a reason that affects markets, your dollars in the bank, your stocks if you're in the markets. We've seen reports of 911 call centers going offline, read reports of a plane almost falling apart mid-flight. One of the big reveals was the number of train accidents last year, some 4,700 in all. Learn why so many big accidents are now taking place in America and exactly where and when the next big accident is most likely to occur. Go to americadisaster.com to watch the free presentation. That's americadisaster.com. Wade, I mean, I asked who the president is. I want you to answer that. And also, just what do you think when Biden has sort of appeared recently a few times in the media? It's like, oh, yeah, I guess that guy's still the president. I feel like the Kamala campaign has got to be just screaming into the pillow. Like they don't want anyone to know, but they must be so angry that this guy is showing up and clowning up everything.
Yeah, I think we're in an odd time where I don't think that the presidency as such really even exists. It's kind of this office that doesn't really, people aren't, even though people might still have some kind of residual respect for the office itself isn't what it used to be. And what I think the regime right now is uncomfortable with is that Trump seems like he actually wants to be president rather than Kamala over here, who wants to be whatever Biden is, which is kind of a figurehead who goes out and talks once in a while. And so who's the president? I mean, as far as the presidency exists, I guess it's Joe Biden, but that says more about the office itself. I think the office has been demeaned so much that it doesn't really count. Unless somebody like Trump gets in, and then whatever he does will be, I guess, again, running for the actual office like it says on the paper, rather than running for what it's become.
Well, have you even heard anyone try to make the argument or explain how it is that Biden is not of sufficient mind to keep running for re-election and therefore be president into next year, but is of sufficient mind to be president right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, does have the cognition. He can have the nuke codes today and for the next few months, but we got to take him away by January. How does that work?
Right. Yeah, we had this bizarre time where Biden quit and then passed the torch to Kamala, but didn't ever say why. Didn't explicitly say why. He just said like, well, it's time. It's just time to change. Yeah, I don't think there is an argument. there's a certain level at which he knows that he's been pushed out. Everybody around him knows that he's been pushed out, but nobody has permission to say why. Everybody knows it was because he was embarrassed in the debate. And then I think they might have held on to him after the debate if it weren't for the attempted assassination on Trump, because that made Trump look really strong as opposed to Biden, who had just been embarrassed. And the media at that point, they turned all of their negative energy that they'd been associating with Trump onto Biden. And so the media went after Trump, chased him out of office, and with the help of obviously Nancy Pelosi and the other folks there. But then after that, they're stuck now with Kamala. I think they delayed as much as they could picking Kamala, but it was the best option that they thought they had. And yeah, I can't imagine that they're pleased with the position they put themselves in.
Isn't it interesting that there's a chance here, Wade? I mean, I heard, your analysis aligns with how I see it in Pennsylvania. There's a chance that the poor Kamala VP pick by Joe Biden was one of the worst decisions because that led to this no primary switch and the whole thing is a mess. And now Kamala may not actually win because of her poor pick as a VP, right? I mean, two VP picks that you would like. Usually VP doesn't, no one even remembers who was VP in the 90s or the 80s, right? Like it's not, wasn't it the guy, potato, and it's like the media attacking the Republican, of course. But you see what I mean? A bad Joe Biden VP pick and a bad Kamala Harris VP pick could be like a cascading failure.
Yeah, well, it certainly is at a certain level where Obama had to pick somebody who could sort of sit in the background and look nice, or at least smile for the camera. Biden had to pick somebody that was worse than he was, and then Kamala has to pick somebody who's worse than she is. It doesn't look good for the future of the Democratic Party if everybody's just constantly scaling down, trying to find somebody who's worse than they are. But yeah, definitely worse in front of a camera, as we saw with Tim Walz. It's a nasty situation they've gotten themselves into. But again, that also assumes that the entire office that they're running for is the actual office that's written down on paper in the Constitution, that this is what the president and vice president are going to do. At some level, they're not even really good figureheads. It would be back in the day, the Democrats had a decent figurehead like Obama and a decent figurehead like Bill Clinton. But now their figureheads aren't even holding up to scrutiny.
I mean, how is it? This is almost like a metaphysical, or we're getting to like the existential here. Country of, I don't know. I mean, how many illegals? We could do a whole podcast on that. It's probably, right. I think there's about 25 million illegals in the country, but it could be low, whatever. There's tens of millions for sure, because we had 11 million plus at least about 10 million under Biden. So call it 25 or 30 million. But 350 million people in the country, roughly. And we have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, really? Like this is where we are. How did this happen?
Right. Yeah, it's at a certain level, the bureaucratization of the whole office is such that the person who's on the front of the ticket just needs to have enough name recognition to get the check mark next to their name. And so we kind of all know that anybody who's voting for Kamala Harris and voting for Joe Biden is basically voting for the status quo, voting for the direction things have been going for a very long time, even at some level while Trump was in office with all the deep state fighting against him. The Washington tried as hard as they could to push him out. Eventually, they ended up succeeding. But that's essentially what Kamala represents. Kamala represents voting for the way things have been going for a long time. And anybody who's fed up with that is kind of by default over on the Trump team. And Trump represents at some level the desire that people have out in the country to change that, to have something other than the status quo. And this coalition of people that have gathered behind Trump are varied. They have lots of different priorities. They have even differences with Donald Trump himself. But the thing they have in common is I don't like the way things are going, and I will not continue to just vote for the status quo, for the blob, for the swamp. in Washington and voting for the system. And at some level, people want disruption, and they've been able to hang some of that hope on Trump, whether Trump's worthy of that or not.
I want to come in and ask you about the Elon factor and all of this here.
Yeah.
And you mentioned him jump. He's we've talked about he jumps around. He's very excited. He's at the rally in Butler. We'll get to this here in just a second. But if your savings and retirement accounts are 100% invested in cash, look, you're not alone, but you should give some serious consideration to diversifying with gold and silver. Look at gold throughout history and look at the price of gold today. It's been at an all-time high recently. But gold has been a store of value. It has been something that has maintained value during inflation, even hyperinflation. Gold is solid. And Birch Gold can assist you in getting gold and silver on hand, real gold and silver you can hold, or converting an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. The best news, you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Text my name, Buck, to 989898. Get a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just information on fortifying your savings. A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. We trust Birch Gold. You can too. Go text my name, Buck, to 989898 for your free info kit today. That's Birch Gold Group. Text Buck to 989898. And yeah, do you think that Elon, I see one thing I love about him, not only is he the richest guy in the world, give or take, and he's doing all these amazing companies and all this cool stuff, he is so red-pilled and also kind of a class traitor to the Silicon Valley billionaire oligarchy, which I just love.
Yeah, he's this guy. What I love about the teaming up of Elon and Trump is that they're both kind of like that. They're guys who kind of came up within the established regime or came up within the established system and have decided that they're not satisfied with that. And so the money and the influence that they've built up through that system is now being used against it. So that even in the response to the most recent hurricane, what we've seen is two guys who are private citizens who have at least shown a little bit more legitimacy than the reigning government. So they've been able to help out where the people who are supposed to, the people who, again, on paper are supposed to be helping out, are not. And so those two guys paired up is kind of a dream team. And I think some folks will think that Elon's being cynical and that he thinks, oh, maybe I can steer Trump. Maybe I can hop on this thing that's already running and winning, and so that I can join up and I'll be in his favor once he wins. But what I think is happening is he actually is so, like, you don't jump up and down like that on the stage. You don't change your profile picture to you wearing a dark MAGA hat. He has nothing to gain reputationally from this. He's made plenty of decisions that at some level don't make sense on paper and don't make sense with financially. He's making a bet at some level that Trump's going to win, that it's going to be good for the country. And I think it's a vision that a lot of folks who can get behind, and folks who are already on Trump's side, and folks who just think that Elon's a cool guy and we're all going to go live on Mars. Like, again, that coalition is a bizarre thing that's happening, but all of them, again, dissatisfied with what we have now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I used to think electric cars were kind of absurd, at least in the early days, with like Prius, which is maybe the ugliest car I think ever designed in history.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they had these other cars. This is a true story actually. In the early days of EVs, the Prius, even though everyone thought it was ugly, because it was all about showing people that you drive an EV, it was far more popular than the cars that look like normal cars, like the normal version of the car, but were electric, right? So it was like virtue signaling via marketing. That was the whole thing.
Yeah.
But now with the Tesla, I'm like, this stuff's actually cool. Like, I might get one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it'd be fun to. Someone in my neighborhood drives I'm not kidding, pink Cybertruck, which I was like, that's bold. It's bright pink and it's a Cybertruck. So there you go.
Yeah.
Wade, where can people? Wade, I've seen your content. That's how I found you. So you're doing great stuff. Where can people go to check out the Wade Show?
Well, I'm on YouTube. The Wade Show with Wade is the name of the show. And I'm also on X at Wade Stotts, WadeStotts. I post my videos there. And then also I have a paywalled podcast on something called Canon Plus. I work with a company called Canon Press up in Idaho. And we that's where we have the podcast. We do interviews and things like that. It's a fun place to be. Yeah.
Go check it out. Wade, thanks for being with us, man. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.